Hi, this is Tolec for the Andromeda Council. Today is Friday, November 16th, 2018, and I'm honored to have with me Troy and Brooke from the greater Salt Lake City area, and Jim from the Northeast. And these people all met at my recent 2018 Transformational Shift Events and Planets Within conference. It was, my third annual Arizona conference, and took place in Sedona at the tail weekend of September. Welcome, all of you, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Tolec. We appreciate being here.
Jim, are you there?
I am here. You hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you great. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Brooke.
Hello.
Now, I understand that the two of you have a beautiful new child. Will we be hearing from her at all during this conversation?
She's trying to lay down for a nap right now, so let's
okay.
hope.
Yeah, we'll just hope she's just going to be very quiet.
Hey, don't worry about it. It's okay.
All right. Okay.
It's just life in motion.
All right. Love it.
Congratulations, you guys. It's always wonderful when a new life comes into the world.
It is.
She's super shiny. She's super, super bright.
Yay.
She's truly, she's here to help raise the vibrational consciousness of this planet.
Does she have like bright, sparkly, twinkly eyes?
She does. They're beautiful blue eyes.
Ah.
And we named her Luna Ray, which is moonbeam. So, we named her after one of our favorite sources of light.
Ah, that's great. Well, I'm sure she will continue to bring a lot of light into your lives. We're having this conversation today because you all have been talking at a considerable amount, exploring the topics of awakening and higher consciousness and the exploration and expansion of ourselves as, if you will, sentient, intelligent humans on this planet. Can you rewind a little bit and tell me about your first conversations at the conference and what they evolved into? And either you, Troy, or Brooke, or Jim, whoever wants to start first, go ahead.
I could take this, Troy.
Go ahead, Jim.
So my understanding, and I don't want to speak for Troy and Brooke, but I'm certain that they had not ever attended a conference or event similar to what you had, Tolec, out there in Sedona, and they were compelled to take the trip out there. I mean, for me, coming from the East Coast, I was compelled to go out there, and we were sitting more or less in fairly close proximity. And I think in a Q&A exchange, we just sort of recognized something about one another that resonated, and we're fortunate enough to really just pick up a very brief discussion while we were there, but we did exchange phone numbers and contact information, so we were able to get in touch with one another. And I think
Yes.
our first conversation was really kind of realizing that we were very much on a similar path, and also at a very similar point along that path, I guess is how I would describe, as far as, and trying to figure out how to fit into this larger concept of awakening and recognizing the difference between those who have who see and recognize the legitimacy of an expanded consciousness, and that there's more than what we're, I guess, led to believe. In a consensus society, and we just kind of picked that up from there.
Yeah. Well, you bring. I think the first point that you raised is one that's worth paying some attention to, which is the fact that for all of you, this was your first conference of a conference of this nature, which
Correct.
Explores a number of different topics, but certainly within the expansion of what people typically call spiritual awakening, spiritual growth. And for those people who've been following my work and the work I've done for years, and even the conferences I've produced, generally these are people that are well wide awake and aware, have been so on a spiritual path for years. So it's interesting. I'm actually fascinated to be here today to have a conversation with you guys who essentially are people that are just waking up. And you're probably going through, I think the word quickening has been used before in terms of once you start to wake up, there's typically like bang, 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 a series of events that happen in your lives or information that comes flooding forward. And maybe that's another good way to continue this conversation is what are some of the unique things that have happened in each of your lives that have said to you, ooh, there's something different going on with me here. I'm a lot different maybe than some of my friends who aren't even considering any of these topics.
Take that, Troy.
All right, so
and the list is probably extensive, but go ahead, whatever hits you first.
It's very extensive.
I was going to say, for me personally, yep, that's happening. Quickening. You got it, Tolec. That's the word.
Yeah.
Event after event.
Right.
Brooke and I call this the advanced growth path. And we joke about it because
Accelerated.
yeah, we're like, why did we choose to grow so fast? Why did we and we kind of joke that growth is code word for explosive drama and family issues and breakdowns and crying and fighting and
Wow.
and yes, there's this definite quickening. I like that word much better, and we're going to use that from here on. Because growth can be painful and hard sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but generally, if you speak with people like me and others that are contemporaries of me who went through an early awakening process and, if you will, dramatic transformations in our lives back in the early to mid 90s or the late 90s, I can pretty much guesstimate and or accurately predict that if you line a bunch of us up, most of us would say that the process has been somewhat long and drawn out. Compared to many of you guys today who are waking up, it's a lot quicker. The process of getting through particular lessons, life lessons, different moments of awakening, quick, much faster these days than what we went through.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to add here, Tolec, is because actually Troy and I were talking about this yesterday as it relates to kind of the historical reference of this larger topic, in that there was sort of a first wave where those who needed to sort of create the genre, right, to bring the first information through and to establish it and kind of blaze that new trail. And I think that also is an ingredient that needs to be recognized, that for people now, it's just a lot easier because of the information that's out there to absorb. In fact, I would say there's more information than any normal human could ever absorb.
Oh, it's amazing.
Right?
Yeah, years ago, there were only a few entry points, and most of them had to do with you either went to, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, but like the Isayan or Eliason group. Another one, like as an example, I think in mid-state New York, the Omega Institute, and or conferences. The web didn't exist back in the mid-90s as a prolific medium or prolific channel information at all. I mean, YouTube didn't exist really until the mid 2000s. That was sort of its beginning point.
Right.
And with the web and YouTube, you now have this almost as, speed of light medium of communication with people.
It's a quickening as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this information on demand is just is amazing to have.
Yeah, without a doubt. So
Tolec, I guess if we could dovetail off of that, I think this is central.
Oh, yeah.
So I think one thing that frustrates me, because for me to go to that conference was way outside of my comfort zone. It's the first time I had done anything like that. But I've just been absolutely blown away by the fact that once you start to uncover the availability, the amount of subject matter that's out there and the number of people who have dedicated their lives to these things, and then you recognize how far removed it is from common knowledge, and how, I don't want to use the conspiracy concept of like hidden, but it's obviously not something that is conventionally shared and openly talked about. And so it's like this huge separation between one subset of the population and what I would consider more of a consensus conglomerate of mainstream society. And I couldn't help but want to go out and see this particular conference, and it just kind of called to me to go there. But that's one thing I'm curious what you think. And certainly Troy thinks, as far as if you agree. I guess my thesis is it's time for people. Like I would say myself, I'm more of a everyday kind of guy. I mean, I own and operate a business, married with children, engineering degree, very, very mainstream, but I'm an observer, and I'm saying there's too much legitimacy to a lot of this stuff for it to remain in the shadows. And I feel driven to find ways to, not to tell people what to think, but to just recognize that there's a lot more to consider. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it certainly does. I was having a conversation with Alexis Brooks recently. She's a very bright, articulate young woman who came out of the television media world. And because she had moments of awakening of her own back in the mid 2000s, I want to say 2005 or 6, it propelled her to leave her traditional career in television media. And now, interestingly enough, she has her own, if you will, it's hard to say interview because she's such an easy person to speak with, but for lack of better words, she has her own interview program. I think it's called The Higher Dimensions, here in this realm that we ubiquitously call alternative media. There's the media, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNBC, et cetera, that people watch on television. And then typically anything else is available on the web, alternative media. And she's simply taken the same skill sets and the same knowledge and intellect that she used to use in her everyday television career, and she's using it here. She's quite adept at it. She's very, very good at it. But we were exploring a lot of different topics, and the point to me rambling here is that it seems that the biggest topic on the table today is the involvement of the human. Who are we individually, uniquely? Yeah, we're a collective because there's many of us on the planet, but who are we really? Why are we here? There's got to be a lot more going on than being born, going to school, getting educated, getting a job, getting married. There's a lot more going on to each person. And that's primarily why we're having this conversation today, to sort of look at what is really going on with this awakening and this quickening. And I'd really like to hear about some of your stories, each one of you, that were like key moments that propelled you to say, I need to do some more digging here, in terms of my own life.
So I'll give you a brief overview. So Brooke and I are from, I guess what the rest of the U.S. calls the Mormon state. So
right.
Recently, Brooke and I just found out through this, the newer group of awakened individuals that have come into our life, that Utah specifically, the Wasatch Front area specifically, has a heavier matrix energy about it, which let the LDS Church founders stay here and start a civilization to keep the LDS culture, in essence, asleep. Like there's this, it's Utah is so beautiful, but there is this really interesting collective Mormon consciousness here that's inescapable. The state is run by Mormon politicians. We have some of the most bizarre regulated alcohol and drug laws anywhere in the nation.
It's probably the least progressive states out of the whole American West and Southwest.
Yes, it is. I worked for the church's law firm in my younger 30s and found out that the church secretly paid and had their attorneys write Proposition 8, which was the California law that would ban LGBT marriages. Just anyway, very interesting stuff. But so I subscribe to the belief that, yes, I got to pick my incarnation here. I probably got to choose my family. I probably chose to be born into a very LDS family. I was the son of a bishop, son of an LDS bishop my whole life growing up. And stop me at any point if I say stuff that you want to touch on or work a side tangent on, but you'll notice children come here and they're wide awake. They're not aware of the matrix. They're just this pure, innocent, in the moment, love and light being. And then at some point between the age of 5 and 8, this was before this new light wave happened, by the way. I'll say this was, probably everything 90s or earlier. The pattern seemed to be children would then get caught up in the matrix. From the ages of 5 or 8, their light starts to dim.
Yeah.
And they become part of this world, part of the school system, part of this organized structure to keep you asleep.
I mean the multi-front programming
Correct.
that
Yes.
they're exposed to. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I'm with you.
So at a young age, I was wide awake, and I knew I was connected to my higher self, a higher consciousness. I knew I was part of something really big, and I knew I was sent here for a very specific purpose. And I knew I was connected to my guardians or my team of ethereal beings that are here to guide me. And at about age 7, probably by design, I was cut off from this. You start to lose those memories. You start to lose for me in particularly, at 7 years old, I asked my parents, am I a twin? I know I was born a twin.
Wow.
And we were separated in the hospital or something. Just, where is my twin? And it really disturbed my parents. They were, no, you were our firstborn son. You were our only son. You never had a twin. Little did I know that was Brooke that I would meet later on in life. who I would recognize as my twin flame and co-creator here, that we're supposed to do energy work and help others around us wake up. But a little after 7 years old, it just felt like a bucket was put over my head, just this metal pail bucket placed over my head, and I was cut off. I was cut off, and now I was part of the matrix. And I remember just being very angry. I was just so upset to not have access to this. And I went through a very angry phase. And for Mormons in particular, not only are you immersed into the capitalistic system here, like you need to go to school, you need to get good grades, you need to work hard so that you can get a job and so that you can pay bills and so that you can continue the system to bring another wave of kids into the system to do the same. Like, hey, you gotta get a good job, because it's fear-based system. If you don't get good grades and you don't get a good job, you're not gonna make
and then you won't. Right, and then you won't be part of the cog in the wheels that make up the collective. You won't be a producing member of society. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Very well put.
Brooke, how about you? When were you always awake, or was there a defining moment in your life where you said, there's more here than meets the eye?
She had an appointment she had to rush off to.
Oh, okay.
But our stories are very similar. If we do this again, I'll have her share her story. But
please, yeah,
very, very similar. So along with the regular, not being a part of the Mormon Church, you're designed to be a contributing member of society. Those in the Mormon Church now have an extra matrix cast upon them where if they commit sin, if they don't follow God's plan, if they don't follow the guidance and principles set out by the church, you will not be able to go to the celestial kingdom, which is the highest heaven in the Mormon religion, and you will not be able to have an eternal spouse and be able to have spirit children and in essence have your own planet and send spirit children down to this planet. You will be sent to Mormons call it the telestial kingdom, but others would refer to this as hell or perdition or whatever. So I was double whammied. I'm born out of the gate. This is my I don't know, karma. I'm double whammy. I'm double matrixed right out of the gate. I'm baptized at 8 years old, and now I'm in a double system. So this was very difficult for me to be grown up living in fear of having to not be enough and get a good job and pay bills, and then living righteously so that Heavenly Father is what we call God in the Mormon religion. Heavenly Father, would be pleased that I was following His commandments, and then I would be able to return to His kingdom. So.
And maybe allow you entry into the gates.
Right.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe.
Like, come on, man.
But not if you're a sinner. Oh no.
Right.
Hey,
so this is what it's like. Like I was double matrixed from the beginning.
Here we go.
This was so hard.
God bless you, my son.
There it is. Yep. Yes.
I think on the other side of the coast, Jimmy, aren't you a recovered Catholic or recovering Catholic?
Well, I don't need to belittle that, but yeah, more or less, I continue to raise my family in the Catholic tradition, having found no better system to give them that moral underpinning. But I've
Sure.
already introduced my 13-year-old to the Law of One series, so just goes to show you how conventional I am as far as any of that stuff goes.
Well,
But interestingly,
then your 13-year-old will grow up being aware of the fact that he or she is self-empowered. That
well, very much so, and I think it's good that you said that, because it is most important to me for my children to recognize that they are not confined to that dogmatic system that is otherwise going to restrict and control what's available to them, they're that, like kind of what Troy was saying, that there's already a predetermined structure that outlines what should be, and I think for me, and I really can't pinpoint how the transition that I guess one could term an awakening or a self-realization process, or whatever you want to call it. For me, it really was an almost unobservable trickle of change, and I think for me, I also now subscribe very much to an understanding that the circumstances I was born into were very intentional, and for me, I was afforded, I think, more freedom than someone like Troy and his community would otherwise have to think outside the box. And I think I just very gradually started to recognize that that it's counterintuitive to think that the domain of consideration that we're kind of programmed into limiting or thinking to is really real. Are actually the boundaries that we should sort of push up against and not push through. And it was interesting, because I think Troy kind of shares this, in that neither one of us had anyone in our lives that was an alternate community kind of person, right? No one who was leading us toward considering things that were outside the box or otherwise unconventional, but rather we just sort of stumbled upon it. So for me, what I find interesting, and Troy and I have had a few conversations in this, is that we recognize the loving presence of the Christ message, right? And we both relate to it very much so, but we also equally don't subscribe to the way that it's packaged and restricted in that dogmatic framework.
yes,
In that
yes,
it provides limitation where there isn't supposed to be any. Like, if you want to say God is infinite, then you shouldn't try to put it in a box. The concept itself is not to be contained, but rather it's to be explored. And I had made a note when Troy was talking, because for me, the way my mind works, being more math oriented, I guess, I'm forever thinking of things in relative terms, right? So recognizing the separation between two conditions, and then kind of analyzing that space in between. And I think what's happening here with people like Troy and myself and countless others is we intuitively recognize that there is something wrong with that old paradigm of being instructed as to what is. But unfortunately, I think more often than not, the baby is thrown out with the bathwater, because it's like, so that is wrong, therefore detach from it. But the problem is everything is discharged, as opposed to saying, okay, how about I retain what makes sense, I retain what resonates with me, but I will allow myself to freely think for myself and to expand my understanding, and allow things that come to mind, to explore them, to not disallow my consideration to drift into things that somehow I've convinced myself I'm not supposed to think. And so that was it really for me, to the point where now, I mean, I do own and operate a business, as I had mentioned, and I still am very much connected with that, what we refer to as that third density material realm. But it makes less and less and less sense to me. But I think there's some utility in it, because I find myself in a unique position, I think, in exploring these things, because I can relate to people who are caught up in that. I can relate to the that fear element that Troy referred to, as far as if you don't conform to the educational side and the job and the earning side and falling into that matrix as he described it. I recognize people come from a perception where they are afraid of, or come from a place of lacking. They don't want to, they're afraid of not having what they need, and not realizing that it's a lot easier than most people would otherwise allow themselves to think. And then once you recognize that, you allow yourself to shift into alternate considerations. So for me, I think it's important that we do something to try and bring to the attention of what I would consider a little bit more of the mainstream unawakened community that, just because you have found fault in certain things, for instance, the religious dogmas, that's legit. But at the same time, you have to replace it with something. And so really it's rather than looking for someone to tell you what it is, I want to try to find a way to help people recognize too that we talked about Tolec in the past, sort of that inner intuition, that higher self,
right.
Know oneself, and in finding your way through that meditation and through that seeking within, rather than looking outside of yourself for direction, and expecting that someone's supposed to prescribe some method or process that you're supposed to then follow and defer to. That's the old paradigm. And it's a slippery slope. But I mean, and I apologize if it took me a while to kind of get
No,
but I'm curious what you think about that and the hangups that I think are the stumbling blocks that prevent people from being receptive to that thinking.
There are many points in all of what you just shared with us, in no particular order. I believe that there's been value in people such as probably one of the early movers in this area was Tony Robbins back in the late 80s, I believe, and he's still doing his thing. Now, Tony is probably one of the most intelligent, high energy, belief in others and belief in self people that I've ever met. And his deep belief is that each of us have the power to become and to achieve whatever we can, whatever we want to be. And so you could consider Tony a leading edge teacher. Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, and others. Even Gary Zukav is probably one of the greatest spiritual for lack of better words, masters, spiritual teachers on the planet today still. And each of them come from a different perspective of helping the human become a more self-evolved, self-aware a being. And yet you raise a good point, and that point is throughout each of those people and others helping humans on this planet, it's the teacher teaches model.
Yeah.
Thousands of people show up or hundreds of people show up, and the teacher stands there and he teaches ad infinitum about all the tools that he uses and that he has used. And I think the point that I'm trying to get at is the difference that you're talking about is today, in this age of quickening, if you will, people are becoming more self-aware, and there is some considerable benefit to talking to other people that are becoming more self-aware and that are waking up, and simply sharing their experiences, not necessarily teaching each other, but sharing their experiences like we're doing today, and analyzing what people have gone through, what they've experienced. And so with that comes considerable aha moments like, oh, you went through this too. I went through this, or I went through it differently, but here's where I'm at, and here's how I'm evolving. and I don't mean me, but the ubiquitous me, all of us that are out there that are evolving and growing. Is that part of what you're saying? Is that simply by each one of us awakening and growing and evolving, that we can help each other just by having this dialogue, not necessarily by going to a teacher?
Well, absolutely, because I think intuitively, people recognize that they're just not comfortable with following someone else's instruction. Right. And it's funny, I pulled this up. I just want to read this. It's 2 sentences or so, but it's actually a quote from Steve Jobs, who I come to realize is probably much more metaphysical and spiritual than most people would ever imagine.
I spoke with Steve while I was still alive.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that, and I think that's an interesting synchronicity.
Really good man.
His quote reads like this. It says, "Your time is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life."
Yes.
Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living the results of other people's thinking. Yes. Don't let the noise of other opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Now, that happens to be hanging on the wall in my home.
Wow.
My wife Gina purchased that. It's just a framed quote. And when I read that, I got chills right now, remembering how it impacted me. As silly as it might sound, it resonated. For people who aren't familiar with the term, what resonates? It's just it touches you in a way that transcends the conventional impact that things would otherwise have. And I read that, and I'm like, when he says, "Don't let the noise of other opinions drown out your own inner voice," it's recognizing and have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. It's just identifying the fact that you are a far more complicated, not complicated. There's much more to you than you might realize. Right?
Yes.
There are aspects of your being that you are connected with in a way that you're not probably paying attention to. But listen to it. Recognize that it's there and listen to it. You, which is your higher self, right? This is where it transcends. Where to read into this quote, if you have a little bit of a broader understanding of the concepts, that there are aspects of your more complete being that aren't immediately accessible, but you have to kind of recognize them. It says you will guide yourself in an intuitive way through a higher self, and I really think most people, and it did for me, recognize that's a truth that you don't need. It's like truth without proof.
Very much so. Very much.
And truth without proof is for me defined by that which resonates deeply within your being, and nobody can convince you otherwise. Once something resonates with you, it is part of your truth. And for me, my truth is I have no interest at all in it making anyone agree with me. But don't for a second think that I'm going to defer to you to suggest that it's not part of my truth. It's part of my truth. Right, and that's that individualization, Tolec, that you just alluded to, and I just brought this quote popped up in my search here, and I'm dying to know what you guys think about that little bit of input on my end.
I have my own thoughts, but this conversation today is more about you guys. Troy, go ahead and chime in here, please.
So my thought there is. When you started with Tony Robbins and all of the higher consciousness teachers or sages that are emerging at this time to just show us the way, point the message.
Leaders.
Like Christ did. He didn't want to be worshipped. He was just showing the way. He was just, hey, you might want to try this to wake up. You might want to try this to gain insight to the power you have access to. One of the most influential people that helped me stay awake was Eckhart Tolle, and his book A New Earth. This man was rocked into a conscious awakening and stayed awake. And this doesn't happen to most people. Like me and James had a conversation the other day, like So when we're younger, we're awake. When we're these innocent beings of light and joy and in the moment, we're wide awake. And then something happens, our ego takes over, and we're immersed in this matrix, and we become our identity, and we become our ego, and we think we're separate from everybody else. So me and James are talking like Eckhart Tolle refers to it in his book as a satori, a brief conscious awakening, when you have this pure conscious moment separate from your ego. And I recall the first one I had ever, in my adult life, was when my son was born. I'm 30 years old. I cut the umbilical cord, and my son is placed in my arms, and tears are streaming down my face, and I am just in this pure satori conscious moment of joy and love and the miracle of birth and creation all at once. Like I am one with the universe, holding my son in this hospital. I'm not aware of my wife. I'm not aware of the team of medical staff that brought him into this world. I'm not aware of the monitors or the beeping. I'm just in this pure moment of love with my son. And maybe, if I'm lucky, it lasted for, I don't know, 2 to 5 seconds.
Seconds, yeah.
Seconds. Yeah. And then my first thought that snaps back, the ego that snaps back and wants you to stay a part of this matrix, says, crap, I got to get a better job. That was my first thought. That's what pulled me out of that moment. Can you believe it? I bet you can absolutely believe it. That was my first thought. Crap. I don't make enough money to support this kid. Like, what am I doing? Am I going to be a good dad? I'm not qualified to raise this perfect being. I don't, what? How do I get him home? I've never used a car seat. Like, these are all the thoughts now coming into my stupid egoic brain, taking me out of that moment of divine conscious,
joy.
Joy.
Yes. That was the word.
How dumb is that? Like, that was it. That was the only conscious moment I had ever had in my life, and it was gone. And I didn't even recognize it till years later, till I had my grand awakening in April 2004. Like, it was bizarre to me. Like,
Troy, when we shared that story, because I have a similar experience with the birth of my son, for instance. But the word joy, as I wrote it down here as you were talking, because I remember. That's what it is. It's we, for the first time in our life, we experienced like unadulterated, just pure joy, and being connected to the everything that is, right? And it's like, but then in hearing you tell that story again now, I recognize that we voluntarily rob ourselves of that joy. We allow ourselves to detach from it and link back into that matrix as you described. And I think it's easier said than done, but recognizing that separation and recognizing the voluntary, I mean, you have to participate voluntarily in removing yourself from that joy. Yet we do it. And so it's like, right? I mean, that's pretty much what we were kind of getting at the other day.
Well, I don't even know if it's voluntary. To me, that's just how conditioned we are from being in the matrix for so long. It's just a reflex. It's just...
Yeah, but you also have and I know something about this because I was wired this way. I also happen to be the firstborn son in our family. And as the firstborn, whether we like it or not, we take on responsibility. We just do. It's part of our job. So,
yes, I'm the oldest of 6, large Mormon family. I totally, I'm on the same page with you, Tolec.
And I was the oldest. I was the oldest of 4, and we break all the barriers. We hurt mom. We're the first to hurt mom and dad and let them down and all that stuff. But
that's more true than most people realize.
yeah, yeah.
Our youngest sibling had it so easy, right? The baby of the family had it so much easier because we blazed the trail for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my youngest sister, at age 16, I'd be home visiting, and I'd walk in the TV room, and Dad would be sitting there. My youngest sister would come bounding in. She'd hop on Dad's lap, and he'd like, whatever she wants, she's gonna get. Like, wait a second,
right?
What happened? What am I gonna do?
Yep.
But, I want to bring you back to that moment of you holding your son for the first time, both you and Jamie. Didn't that moment, whether it lasted 3 seconds or 7 or 8, didn't that moment also feel timeless? Weren't you in a moment of no time? Looking at this beautiful new life form.
Yes.
Going, wow.
It's accurate. Yeah, well, time sort of stops.
There was no time, did not exist.
Right. Yes, it's not a condition of the experience.
We were immediately part of the infinite. The eternal. Like the time. Yep. There was no end, no beginning.
Now I will, and here's where I'll chime in. I have not been a father in this lifetime. But I can tell you that living the life of being awakened and changed and aware of the sacredness and the beauty on this planet, I can tell you that I have had moments with friends and moments just with me interacting with nature, feeling so blessed, for lack of better words, that time stood still. Whether I've been, as an example, I produced a concert a couple of weekends ago, and it was not well attended, but it was an absolutely incredible event. And I looked around at the friends that were near me, and those moments of looking around and seeing the joy on their faces, those moments were timeless. They generated extreme joy inside of me. I've been out in nature in Arizona for many years hiking. Being out and only seeing an occasional hawk or an eagle, or hearing what I call the sounds of nature. It's essentially ground squirrels, rabbits, jumping along, the sounds of insects. Moments of bliss that are timeless, simply because I'm open and have an interest and an awareness that I've been blessed to live on this beautiful, beautiful planet. And there are other moments like that I've had like that. I happen to body surf. I love being in the ocean. When I'm body surfing, I feel 12 or 14 or 15 again. I couldn't tell you what age I am. And when I'm in the water riding a particular wave, timeless moments filled with joy. I bring those up simply as examples to tell people that when you become awakened to the greater capacity and ability to be more than the organic human body, those moments can happen repeatedly for people. And I would anticipate if you guys went out and interviewed other people who have been awakened for years, they would share their own personal stories about moments of joy and bliss since they've been awake. Any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Once you have that, so at the time I had that first moment with my firstborn son, and then immediately went unconscious 5 seconds later.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't even know it at the time.
Troy, I think we lost you. Tolec, are you there?
Like,
oh, there you go.
like, sorry, I just had a little breakdown moment with this girl. So I didn't even know, at the time, I didn't even know what that was. I just went unconscious, and I didn't even recognize it until years later when I became conscious. Eckhart Tolle just makes it very simple in his books. He's like, the answer he gives everybody to the biggest question of why am I here? That's probably one of the most fundamental questions every human has here is, why am I here?
Yes.
And he just puts it very simply. You are here to awaken. You can figure out your purpose later, but you are here to wake up. Once you're awake, Tolec, you can do what you've done and go on to create these marvelous events where others too can awaken, or to gather groups of assembled people that are awake. But once you're awake, then you can revisit those past memories and be like, oh yeah,
right, yeah,
that was.
Yeah.
Now I have a reference for that's what happened at the hospital. I had no idea. I don't know. I just thought I was touched by a new birth. Like I had no concept of what conscious awakening was until I was all the way awake. But once that happens, yes, Tolec, you can have these. You can recreate that moment at any time.
At any time, that's correct.
Any time now, I can go out, I can put my bare feet on the grass, I can take off my shirt, I face the sun, I take a couple conscious breaths, and boom, I'm there. I hear the birds chirp, I hear the bees buzzing, I hear the squirrels chirping,
Right.
You are at unity consciousness now. And that's what me and James have talked about since, is like, this is what we want to bring to people. So when we went to Sedona, and I too felt called to go there, I truly believe now it was just to meet some of the people. It wasn't necessarily for the information that was disseminated, because
very true.
Me and James both went there for this kind of talk. Yes, I love UFOs. Yes, I watched all of the Star Trek series. I've been a UFO freak for years and years and years, but I'm done with that now. It doesn't matter. Yes, I believe there's good ETs. I believe there's, for lack of a better word, bad ETs, service to self ETs. Yes, I believe we have a federation of planets watching out for us, trying to help this planet.
But even acknowledging all of those likely factors in the universe, this experience of ours on this planet, and I've said this, I've been asking this question since I first woke up in the early 90s. Who are we?
Yes.
Why are we here?
Yes.
And where are we going from this point? Now, those are the questions I was asking in the very early 90s. Now, I'm going to say something that is a legitimate, real fact. I've never read any of Eckhart Tolle's books, and yet I've had a number of people say to me, geez, Tolec, you sound a lot like Eckhart Tolle in terms of the themes that you bring up. I will tell you categorically, having never heard what you just said, in quoting him, one of the very last slides in my own presentation is, at the very end of the presentation, there's this beautiful photo of a number of people standing almost knee-deep in water. And it's sort of like at sunset, the colors are wonderful, and I use that photo to frame the following. We are here to heal, to learn, to evolve, to transform, and grow.
Yes.
And a number of people who are on the awakening path, I've come to observe, don't always quite recognize that it's really important that whatever childhood and teenage experiences you've been through that have potentially left deep emotional, for lack of better words, scars or energetic residual in this human bioetheric form, because we're not just organic, we are bioelectrical, and energy stays residual in these bodies. It's important. It's important. It is really, really, I can't tell people how important it is to whatever processes work for you, each one of you, to find those processes that work best for you and release that pain that you've carried for years.
Yes.
It's like, you got to take the course 099 before you can start the rest of your college courses. You got
right.
Releasing pain 099 and maybe releasing pain 150, but you got to go through it, because until you do that, all of those old pains and the energy that's residual will keep circling back to haunt you whenever you try to make new decisions. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Complete sense.
Yeah.
Well, in all of those things, like me being born a bishop's son, oldest of 6, double matrix, staunch Republican, like all of those things were designed, I believe, to rock me awake. My awakening was not subtle. It happened in a split second, and boom, my ego disappeared. I was at unity consciousness in a blink of an eye.
There you go.
And none of it would have happened had I not gone through the experiences I had gone through. And me and James touched on that in one of our many conversations, is that I loved my childhood and my youth and my friends and my school experiences and my Mormon experiences, because I would have not had the awakening I would have had it not been for those.
There you go.
It was your catalyst. It's the catalyst, right? It created the potential difference that was necessary. Movement is only done with a potential difference, right? You got to go from one state to another, and it got to be very different. And without that potential, it's stasis. So I recognize that. I think my trickling, I used the word trickling before. I think my trickling awakening, because it's really since as a teenager, I guess, is when, unbeknownst to me, really, that process started. But I didn't have that strong of a potential difference that Troy had. So
Jimmy, I don't know how much you're willing to share about this. This is an event that you've told me about and that you've told Troy about as well, I'm sure. There was a major event in your life that changed you forever.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to share that, because I think there's benefit in what it revealed to me. So this would go back to 1989, 16 years old, and I was a passenger in a motor vehicle with a bunch of other teenagers, and it was a very serious accident that we got involved in, and a very good friend of mine who was in the vehicle died, and another young girl who was in the vehicle died, and 30 years later. So this is, and I think I might have mentioned this to you, Tolec, or maybe to you, Troy. The 30th year was a mantra that was just sort of like pulsed in the back of my mind. And this is literally my 30th year, and without a doubt, since this event, and without a doubt, the degree to which I have put together the pieces that I have assembled independent of one another over time, not recognizing the relationships, but everything has sort of come back together. But it all stems really from this event. And I could get into a lot of detail, but I think I just for sake of time here, the takeaway from the experience is that after 30 years of having this in my mind and having it be sort of the I guess the potential energy that was pushing me forward without my awareness of it, I began to recognize that in the 30 or so minutes that I was apparently unconscious in the vehicle before I woke up on my own and crawled out, I had an out-of-body or near-death type experience. And unfortunately, I can't share the experience as though I'm retelling the visual of a movie, because it hasn't come back yet that way, but more of a feeling state I recall how I felt having experienced this out of body, I don't know what you want to call it, but what my takeaway is I was confronted. I was confronted with my reality. I was confronted with the fact that I was here with a purpose of service, and
okay,
the underlying service is, and it's kind of giving me a chill right now and seeing how these things come together. But it's exactly what this conversation has been about. It's about awakening. It's simply awakening others to the potential of consideration of these other transcendent concepts of the fullness of what we are and the oneness that we are. And the profound experience element that they take away was, so I was in the presence of others, I can say. There was certainly another consciousness or series thereof that were giving me the opportunity to observe my situation as a 16-year-old. And I was given the opportunity to remember having lived past lives and having crossed back over after the end of that incarnation, and having lived that previous life not awakening to the reason why I was there. And all I can tell you guys is the most profound regret, angst. I've been sharing this with Troy. Being a parent, it was sort of like if you had the potential of directing your child from enduring something terrible, yet you for some reason didn't take advantage of it, and then had to observe that the consequence of your failure had resulted in, right? It was just this deep, like I remember recognizing, and I apologize if this is not coming together cleanly. I know it will.
Right.
Let me just keep flowing here.
Right.
In recognizing in that moment when I had crossed over and seeing and being provided the opportunity to sort of re-experience what it felt like to have lived a full life and to have passed over out of that incarnation, and then come to that immediate moment of realization of who you are, why you were here, what your true purpose it was. I remember just almost like a deer in the headlights, just staring there, like jaw dropped, saying, no, I could not have possibly let this happen. It was just gut-wrenching. And that's why I say to people, like, people talk about being judged at the end of a lifetime. Trust me, there is no harsher judge than you are on yourself.
Yes.
And when you recognize that you fell short of your human purpose, of the love that you have for others, and the whole reason why you keep coming back here, and you get entangled in this matrix that we've been talking about in this program, that you've allowed the blinders to stay on, that you didn't awaken to that. Because like Troy had said, once you awaken, the rest of it, you become activated. I've used this analogy with both of you guys, I believe, which was shared with me, which is the germination of a seed, right? It's that if a seed is exposed to water, a process happens by itself without the cooperation, right? It's because there is a dormancy that exists that just needs the opportunity to just start to be released, and it will take over on its own. So in this experience that I had, and I didn't remember it happening till literally within this past year, maybe 2 years now. And little bits and pieces have trickled back in. But I said to myself, and I mean this, guys, no pun intended, but over my dead body, am I going to cross back over and let this ever happen again. I will not let it happen. I am not going to let myself go through this life convincing myself that the programming of acquisition and recognition being the only things of importance, that I'm supposed to follow in the footsteps of this programmed society, and that's what's important. No, none of those things are important, guys, and we know this, right? That's not what's important. What's important is our service to others and helping through compassion and love of one another, of awakening to the oneness, to the fullness of our being. And all that other stuff becomes so shallow, right? So hollow, so unimportant. But that's not to say that we don't have to. We need to be secure in our life. We need to live. We need to be comfortable within reason.
Right, and we need to be fully functioning adults, making awake and aware decisions.
Yes, and I hope you guys agree that you kind of feel in the deepest crevices of your being, like you're not crossing over, looking back on your life, having not taken the opportunity to serve, and that's what Troy and I have been talking about. Like, we just feel in our bones that we just need to put ourselves out there. And I'll tell you what, and I mean this with every fiber of my being. People can mock me, and I just bring it on, man. Like, it's okay, and I understand it, and I don't judge you for it, and because it's scary to think that your entire life has been maybe not a complete lie, but certainly incomplete of all that really is available to think and understand and consider. And for people that, that cognitive dissonance reaction, I've seen it, right? Troy and I have talked about this numerous times, and how we've really had tremendous falling outs with people that are very important to us. And all we're trying to do is speak our truth, speak to love and compassion. And somehow that gets a harsh reaction. So Troy, actually, that's, I think, a good segue, because I've had quite a bit of time here, but please share some comments, some feedback on all that.
So James said it, like, with this, we call it conscious awakening. The people I'm most closely associated with here in Utah, my most oldest childhood Mormon friends, my very Mormon family, truly, they literally, truly believe Satan has me in his grasp. This is what they think. They pray for my spirit and for me to come back into the fold, because they believe Satan has twisted my truth and my perception so badly that I am now lost, and that I am doomed to outer darkness, or the lowest level of the Mormon kingdom, because higher consciousness is of Satan. I can't make this up. Tolec.
Wow.
I can't make this up, James. My family
how do you deal
literally feels I have been taken over by Satan and his temptations.
There are so many ways to approach this topic, and it probably deserves a completely altogether.
It deserves its own show.
Right. I was just going to say, but maybe I can put some packaging around this thought and simply say that, if you will, they believe that you have wandered off of their chosen path, and there will always be people in all of our lives who want you to walk their definition of their path. And whatever their motivations are, they still want you to walk their definition of their path. And
very well put.
And Jim so aptly quoted Steve Jobs, who essentially said, and I'll paraphrase here, live your life, take risks, be passionate, and be in joy about your life, and don't let your life be defined by other people.
Yeah. But look at the paradox we're dealing with here, though, guys, because what Troy just explained is genuine love. Like, these people care deeply about him, and they're really concerned. So it's like, how do you push back on love? even if it's misdirected.
Yeah, but is it pure love, or is it love in a combination with fear?
Oh, it absolutely has a huge fear component, but it's not a binary consideration, right? It's really, really complicated. So it's like when people genuinely care about you and they think they have your best interest in mind, but it's completely in misalignment with your understanding, it's an impasse, right? It's an absolute impasse. So to navigate through that becomes incredibly difficult because you see within them genuine compassion for you.
You want to come tell your story, they would love to come hear your story, and I'll take her for you.
Right.
So one of the things I want to continue there with what James just said is Brooke and I refer to this as third density love. This is conditional love.
Good description.
It's matrix love. It's
like
the love my first wife and I had. It was, hey, I love you, but only if you make me happy. Hey, I love you, but I'm not responsible for my own happiness. I love you if you do the things I like you to do, if you believe what I believe, yep, I totally love you, but hey, it's the vibrational love here. It's not unconditional. It's not fourth or fifth density pure. It's tainted by our ego. It's twisted by our ego. And even though James says this, yes, I know my mom loves me. I do. She gave me birth here and brought me into this world, but she's saddened by my choices. And she's told me several times she does not agree with my life path or my choices. And she withholds now part of her love because she does not believe I'm following Heavenly Father's plan of salvation.
You should have seen the look on my now 87-year-old wonderful, dear Irish Catholic mother's face when I said, Mom, do you really believe that this incredible God who created this universe and this planet and brought all of us to life, that he only resides in a building called a church?
Right. That's exactly, yes.
Her eyes almost crossed, but she was like, she actually had to think, and she's a bright woman. She went, she had a difficult time responding, but she eventually went to her safe place, which was, yes, but you should still go to church. That's the only place she could land. I'm like, Mom.
I know, it's so conditioned in our parents. It is. There's no other way.
But it's more than that,
the blinders are super glued on.
But it's the cognitive dissonance, Troy, right? It's the fact that people have mapped out their understanding of reality, and if they come across something that doesn't align with that mapping, they don't know what to do with it. And that fallback is literally it's what it is. It's a giant eraser, right? It allows them mechanically in their own mind to dispense with something that doesn't fit and reject it. It kicks it out, and not that we want to segue into a whole nother direction. But Troy and I were talking about it. There are people who are much older. They are set in their ways, and I don't feel comfortable compromising their comfort zone. Right? The utility in it just doesn't seem to make sense. My focus really is in the younger people, 30s, 20s, get into much younger. They're just not paying attention at all.
True.
Generally speaking, right? So it's like the format that I'm most interested in here are for when people actually start when you look around. Right? Troy and I were actually talking about this yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday though, where they look around and they say, "This doesn't make sense." Right? This get up every day, the grind, the the materialism of existence, it doesn't make sense. The problem is that's the only option they have to consider. And when you don't have another option, you don't have another option. And that's the frustration I alluded to earlier in this conversation, which is there is so much information out there, but the stigma that this information makes you unhinged, makes you unbalanced, makes you in some other category that is lesser in your cognitive capacity to understand what is reasonable, right? It's that stigma. That's why I like the fact that I'm a total, but in that paradigm kind of guy. But at the same time, I'm awakened to an expanded consciousness and consideration, and trying to find a way to get subject matter out there to people to say it's okay, right? I think I shared this with both of you guys, the sticks and stones metaphor that I like to use, right? As the nursery rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That reaction of where people are just unhinged because the information that's being put forward just doesn't fit into that mapping that they have in their mind. It's like, listen, these are just ideas. It's not a stick. It's not a stone. You're going to be fine. But
so James, that's a perfect segue. Brooke just got back, and that's a perfect segue for how she woke up realizing, hey, something's not right here. And she's got 10 minutes before she goes again, but I want to get the feminine. She had a very feminine awakening, and I want her to share that now. She's got 10 minutes. So gentlemen, here she is in all her glory.
Hi, guys. I'm so sorry I had to leave. I wish I could have heard everything that happened before this.
We're glad you're back.
Thank you. Good to be back. So Troy said that you wanted to hear my awakening story. So 2011, I was pregnant with twins, and I miscarried. And for me, it just depression, anxiety. I was really a pretty happy-go-lucky person, but that just the dark night of the soul kind of experience for me. That was like so dark, so gloomy, so sad. So I don't know. It was the most difficult thing I've ever been through in my life up to that point. So I know that it happens a lot. I'm not the only one. There are multiple women out there that have this experience, but for me, it led me to something more. So I go through the deepest state of depression I've ever experienced in this life, anxiety, fear, all of it. And bless my first husband's heart. He was so patient and so kind, but he finally reached a point too where he's like, you kind of are acting like a crazy lady. Like, I get this has been hard for you, but will you please go see the doctor? Will you please do something, because you're moody, you're fine one minute and then the next minute you snap. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to the kids that we do have. You bet. I'll go see the doctor. So I walked into the doctor's office. They have me fill out a survey. And he comes in and he's like, you are severely depressed. I said, yeah, I know this. I am well aware of what I've been experiencing. And he hands me a prescription and he says, here, go take, I don't even remember what he handed me.
Oh, boy.
Some kind of Prozac, Xanax. I don't know what it was. And so I'm sitting at the doctor's office looking at this prescription, and I know it's not right. Like, in my heart, in my gut, in my, just every part of me is like, if I do this, you don't go back. Like, I've crossed a line that I can't cross, and I can't do this. So I tore up the prescription paper and threw it in the trash and left, and just, I can do this on my own, right? Like, I have the mental capacity. I have the ability to choose something higher. I know this isn't it for me. This is not going to work for me. That it would be the epitome of not knowing at the time, but that would have kept me asleep more than anything. So
good point.
Anyway, right. So yeah. I leave the doctor's office and he's like, so did you go fill your prescription? And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'll do better. Like, I really will. I will find a way to make this better. I will fix this. There's more to life than this. I know it's a hard thing that everybody goes through, but I'll find a way. So I did counseling, and that didn't work. And I did, I don't know, just an array of things that I tried to come to wholeness with myself because I was a mess. Then finally, bless my grandmother's heart, she's such an old soul, and she's such a big part of my life. She gives me a book by Neil Donald Walsh, Friendship with God. And I read this book, and my whole perspective changes about, God, we're beautiful. We are everyone is just an angel. We are angelic beings. We are all the same. No one's good or no one's bad. No one's right or no one's wrong. God loves us all, whatever you call God, creation, source, whatever that is to you. It was like religion's been wrong. They made God, judge you when you get to the final day. And anyway, all of that. And it just was this complete shift in my perception. And I was like, wow, there is more to this than just, anyway. So, and then each little step, but I would say the turning point for me was probably my miscarriage. It made me, in my opinion, choose something higher rather than just, do what everyone else is doing and taking a pill to deal with depression or, and I'm not faulting them or judging them, or I get that is a choice that they decided to make. But for me, I knew it wasn't right. And everything inside of me said, no, this is not for you. There's a better way. There's a different way. And then the book, and then just every little things just kept happening and changing my perspective more and more and more, and becoming more aware of, okay, this is not really what's going on here. So anyway, yeah. And then I met Troy, and that instantly set off a whole another a sequence of events that just, a lot of things I needed to let go of, a lot of false beliefs I had, and ideas and thoughts and patterns, conditioned ways of being that I had been because I didn't know any better, or that, that's what I had been taught. So anyway, that's my story. So if you guys wanted to go ask questions or go more in depth, I would love to talk.
No, wow. Thank you for sharing that, Brooke.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I appreciate that insight. What was interesting there is you guys blow me away, both you and Troy, and I guess Tolec as well. But it's like there's like an energy signature to that story. How I would describe it, and it's like so the energy signature. I have the same energy signature, but the story. It's like what's that called when you're it's a book. You did it when you're kids, right? And it has a story, but it has blanks. You fill it in, and you don't tell the person what the story is, then you read it. Ad-libs or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
But that's what I mean by like placeholders. So it's sort of like the broader narrative that will get you to the end is sort of programmed, but every life has their own filling in the blanks. Right. And I have, like, I was getting chills as you were sharing the gut-wrenching nature of the catalyst right. that propelled you into where you are now. And I think Troy alluded to it as well too. Like if he didn't, and you weren't here for when he was sharing it, but I'm sure you guys talk about it all the time, where if he didn't have the particulars of his life in his earlier years, it wouldn't have provided the potential energy, so to speak, to propel him into where he is now. And would you agree that it, as unnerving as it might be at one level, it required a gut-wrenching catalyst?
Absolutely. So that's, I know in the midst of a difficult challenge or what seems like, why is this happening? I can't believe I'm going through this, is the exact moment when, if you can shift and choose gratitude and be so grateful for the experience, because it seems the harder it is, the more amazing it is in the end. Like you to look
yes.
back. You're like, wow,
yeah,
that's incredible. Holy cow. I had no idea. And in the middle of it, you're just like, oh, dear Lord, somebody please throw me a dinghy because I am drowning. And
yeah, we do. We come through the other side.
right,
And,
you do.
yeah, and we go, what an impact on my life.
Right. Yeah, and you're forever changed. It is so true that once you dip your toe in the water, you don't go back. Like you just move forward. I know Troy emphasized growth, and it is.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
You evolve and you become more with every experience you go through. And the moment you choose gratitude for that and give it thanks and bless it and, just all of it, you just you grow and you evolve. And those are the moments that you look back and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
And if I may chime in for a moment, there are people who their life has been such that maybe they don't, if you will, as a metaphor, they don't dive in the water right away. They don't take the plunge to learn about the totality of who they are.
Right. Yeah.
And the different, if you went, not only the nudges, but the prompting and different events that have thrust them into the potential for a new, very different life.
And
it's okay. It's okay that they do whatever their process is.
It is. And it's so easy to play that victim out. You know what I mean? Your ego feeds off of that, right? So I'm getting something from this. There's something for me in this. And so you protect yourself or you play the victim.
Well, I was going to say that for them, it feels like a false, at least in parentheses, a false safe place. Because they think
it's protection, right?
Yeah. They're like, oh, not now. I don't have to do this now. I can sit in this nice, safe, unknowing place.
Right. Yep. And I'm not responsible or accountable for. Right. Yeah, but like I said, once you turn the corner and your perspective changes, then there's no going back. Then the more experiences you have, the more you want to have, and you want to grow, and you want to see where this amazing journey's taking you. Like, if you just go all in and trust and have faith, it's incredible. I'm just in awe every day with where we are now today, versus 2011 where I was. So it's amazing though. I just love it. And I love what you guys are doing and this call. Every day I come home from work and Troy and James are on the phone. I'm like, oh, I love that you guys have this connection and that you're energized and there's passion and inspiration in these conversations. And I just get excited. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's fun. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of it. It's been amazing.
Well, it's not me allowing. I may be allowing a platform, but for the most part, I've wanted to provide an open platform for all of you to take these things that are important in your lives, these passionate moments about awakening and realizing that you're more than what you were born into. You're more than what your parents defined for you. Mm-hmm. And that you're now, because you're asking more questions and you're digging deeper, you're propelling yourselves into a more fulfilled sense of life. It's a joy for me to sit and listen and to be part of this experience. It really is.
That's awesome. And I'm so grateful. I know we talked about Luna at the beginning, but what our children now are being brought into, where there are more people awake and there's been a shift, and I'm hoping that they get more, that it's a different experience for them, and that they're able to see more than what we did as children. And there's more opportunity and more.
Well, they're certainly being if you will, born into. Now, of course, they probably chose when they were going to be born into this, but
Right.
they're being born into a time of amazing, an era, if you will, an era of amazing dynamic changes.
Exactly.
Probably, I more than any other time in my life, it's astounding to see the changes that are happening, changes that I never thought would happen. Like,
Right. Exactly. Right.
yeah.
And I love that they get that opportunity, and I'm so grateful that I'm a mother of 3 children that chose me to bring them here and show them a different way than what's previously been here. So
Yeah. Jim and Troy, do you have any closing thoughts for this first segment of this? I believe it will be a continuing conversation. Any closing thoughts?
Yes. So, closing thoughts. Brooke, myself, and James, and yes, I'm going to speak for all 3 of us here. We were pulled to this conference, I believe, just so we could start, so that we could meet you, Tolec, and start to have more of these conversations and expand our circle of, awakened conscious friends. We went there, really gravitated toward Alice and Co. and QHHT and the event and the wave and the higher vibrational consciousness and more of these awakening stories so that we can kind of ride that. You said you boogie boarded, Tolec, or you surfed?
Body surf.
You body surf. So
Yeah.
we want to ride this body surfing wave of higher consciousness and let it wash over others so that they too start to awaken.
Keep in mind also that people come into this, if you will, arena of exploration, we'll call awakening, spiritual development and growth, from a number of different avenues. Some people come in through yoga, some people come in through spiritual growth, some people come in because church no longer works for them or whatever form church takes. But I only had 2 people that focused on the paranormal aspects and the wonderment of UFOs out of those 10 or 11 speakers. As a matter of fact, I think I only have 1 next year in next year's conference that had any kind of UFO experience. So I'm definitely shifting much more of my own attention and focus on this topic of us as sacred, if you will, sacred light-filled beings that come to this planet and that have come to this planet year after year after year living Earth human lives. I really believe that this is a defining moment for us as a species to, if you will, not only evolve, but probably become the best version of us that we can be in this form.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll grab that segue from you, Tolec, because I know in our recent conversations, you've been so, I guess, profound in your thinking to say, I'm going to take the model and turn it on its head, right? And for upcoming events, you recognize the utility of the dialogue, and that when you have the opportunity to bring together this like-mindedness, there is a lot to be gained by providing that platform of a cooperative group
dialogue.
Dialogue. The collaborative effort, I guess, is where I was going with that. In keeping very much with what Troy had said. First off, I am grateful for the opportunity to participate in this. It's amazing. You had alluded to the time frame of how long the process of awakening has been unfolding from person to person. I think for both Troy and I, it was the real difference here is it went from an internalization to the more overt participation in saying, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and I'm going to engage. And that's what Sedona was for me. It was the opportunity to get out of that shell, the contraction that it represents. Even though my mind internally was allowing me to go places in a very expanded way, I was still on my heels, right? I was still contracted in that interaction capacity. And I think and I may be wrong, but I have to assume that there's this silent, dormant potential that's looming out there, that's desperately seeking an avenue of interaction to start to share, as you know, we've been alluding to in this broader conversation. And I too would love to be to participate in such a thing, whether it be continuing these conversations, whether it be, I think, Tolec, you had mentioned like one-day events where you have a few people sort of introduce themselves and their expertise or particular niche, and then have a group discussion.
I'm actually going to be doing one of these on Saturday, May 11th, 2019.
It's going to be a smashing success is what I was going to say.
Yeah. We'll have 7 panel speakers. They'll introduce themselves over probably about 35 to 40 minutes at most. And then we'll take a break for lunch. And then the rest of the day, and we'll probably have 1 or 2 breaks in that 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock time frame. But that rest of the time will be all dialogue back and forth between each individual speaker and all of the people in the audience. And a matter of fact, I'm probably going to do the thing in a 2/3 circle or half circle at minimum, so that it's a much more relaxed setting.
And there's an intimacy in that too, right?
Yes.
Where people can connect, and that's actually a word that just popped in my head. I recognize the significance of that concept of connection. It's that deep interconnection you have within yourself that people have masked from themselves and aren't open to, and then it's the interconnection between ourselves, right? We are all one, and we Troy and I, again, both coming from a religious background, we recognize that in the framework of those dogmatic teachings, unfortunately it's not the 99.9% things that all of these religions have in common. It's the 0.1% or less that they have different. And it's like, no. We really need to embrace what we have in common and come together. And I know that kind of sounds new agey and whatever, but I don't know.
But you raise a good point. People, in the old model, in the old model of the Tony Robbins and or other speakers that are experts, there's a crowd of people, whether that crowd is 150 or 200 or 2,000, they are talked to. They're being taught by a teacher or a master. This new model that we're talking about, I'm going to have the speakers introduce themselves so that the audience members can have some reference point for who each person is. Other than that, it is my purpose and my intention to have a complete bilateral dialogue between the attendees and the speakers, so that the attendees may recognize the speakers as the speakers, but for the most part, it's going to be, if you will, in a Native American tradition, a conversation in the best way I can get it, in the round as possible, so that everyone has a voice, everyone is heard. That's why I'm not calling it a Q&A. I'm calling it an afternoon of dialogue, because I think these days, it helps people to be able to tell either their story or pieces of their story, and it helps with their own self-enlightenment and self-education to be able to tell their story. Some of them have questions, but most of them, I guarantee you, most of them will be telling about aspects of themselves, because it helps them to relate. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's just great power and utility in expression itself, right? And that's going back to what I said before, where I internalized things very, very deeply, very heartfelt, in a very heartfelt manner. But it's not until you express with another. And Troy, and Brooke, you'll resonate with this a little bit. But the saying, or it's within the Christ message, but it's where 2 or more are gathered. There's something really powerful there. It's sort of like when you have to take that abstract comment and you need a thought, rather, and you need to bring it into being, into manifestation. It makes you understand it in a way that's different. And when people then hear it, and then you see their reaction, I believe it's this dialogue. It's this cooperative collaborative process that we're engaging in that's going to reveal things in deeper, more meaningful ways. Does that make sense to you guys when I say that?
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Troy, you guys still there?
Word here creates your world. There is something absolutely creative when you speak your story into existence, so that it can help and lift those around you. So,
well said. Good.
And there we go.
Yeah, she wanted to be heard too. See,
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, I too need attention.
That's right. Well, listen, I think the sound of that young lady's voice is our marker to wrap it up for this time. So Jim and Troy and Brooke, thank you for your nudging and your impetus to have this conversation happen. I think there's been value in all of it. Let's stay in touch and let me know when you'd like to do this again, and we can take the next steps to do that.
Yeah, right.
That would be great.
I'm all in, Tolec.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for arranging this today. It's been very enlightening. I enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
Great, and thank Brooke for revealing her story. It's always good for especially for us as men to hear the female perspective and what women go through.
Absolutely.
Yes, I absolutely will pass that along. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Troy, you guys be well.
All righty. So for Tolec and Jim and Troy and Brooke out in Utah, thank you very much for listening, and have a great weekend and a wonderful Thanksgiving.